Hey guys, sorry this took so long. I got stuck in Colleen Hoover's basement. Still not in that Facebook group though. Apparently everybody got in except for me. I'm definitely not bothered by that at all. It's fine. I'm totally fine. But welcome to part 2 of the Coho series. If you haven't watched part 1, I covered Ugly Love in that version. I'll link it in the cards below. But today we're actually going to be looking at 2 different Colleen Hoover books. The first being It Ends With Us, which is easily her most popular, and All Your Perfects, which I noticed was on a lot of top 5 lists when it came to her catalog, and was described as like a deep cut that really showed off her best qualities as a writer, so that's why I picked that one. Before we get into it though, quick shout out to today's sponsor, ThredUp. They're an online consignment and thrift store, and I personally really like it just because it makes it a lot easier to buy secondhand, because I can shop by size, item, brand, or color, and there's new items every day. It's basically the perfect combination between the ease of online shopping, but you still get the perks of buying secondhand, whether that's like getting a good deal or just having less of an environmental impact. I especially love shopping on ThredUp in the fall because the deals on knitwear, chef's kiss. I recently got this super cool like knitted t-shirt from Tommy Hilfiger. This thing had an estimated retail of $138 and I got it for $29.99. I ended up pairing it with a denim skirt that I also got from ThredUp that was originally from Asos. I just feel like this is a cool way to spice up a t-shirt with like a different texture. And it's adorable. I got this sweater from Free People, which I'm obsessed with. The estimated retail for this thing was $158 and I got it for $49.99. I just love a good chunky knit sweater that makes me feel either like Harry from When Harry Met Sally or Rory Gilmore. And this makes you feel like both. I paired it with a skirt that I also got from ThredUp. I love this. I think it's so cute. It kind of reminds me of like the interior of a 90s coffee shop, if that makes sense. But I think they go together very well. Like very autumnal. Hands down, my favorite thing I grabbed though is this Peruvian Connection cardigan. This thing had an estimated retail value of $255 and I got it for $78.99. And I adore this cardigan. I think it is so cute. The pattern, the colors on it, it's so cozy and fall. I feel like Marnie from Halloween Town when I wear it. And she was whimsical as hell. If you like some of the stuff that I picked up, ThredUp actually has a feature where if you click my link, you get to see all of the stuff that I got as well as similar options to them. And right now you can get 40% off your first order instead of the usual 30%. So I definitely check them out. I couldn't recommend them more. You can shop my picks with the link below in the description box and use my code KC40 for that extra 40% off your first order. And thanks again to ThredUp for sponsoring today's video. Also, as usual with these videos, if you enjoyed either of the books that I'm talking about today, it's no worries. I unknowingly gave a Kylo Ren fanfic 5 stars once. Did I know it was a Kylo Ren fanfic? No. But looking at the cover now, I feel like I probably should have. What I'm trying to say here is that me not liking a book shouldn't take away from you liking it. So yeah, there's also going to be some content warnings on screen, by the way, for anyone who needs them. But otherwise, let's get into the first book. So this story follows the relationship between our 2 main characters, Quinn and Graham. Their meet cute happens when Quinn decides that she's going to surprise her then fiance, Ethan Van Kemp, but she's surprising him by showing up early to meet him at his apartment, but she realizes that there's a man outside of his apartment, and his name is Graham. And it turns out that Graham is outside of her apartment because he was following his then girlfriend, who he suspected of cheating on him, all the way to Ethan Van Kemp's place. So they both find out that their partners are cheating on them with each other. My fiance lives here. He's inside. Yeah, he's inside all right. Inside my fucking girlfriend. Now obviously Ethan is not the true love interest in this story. It's Graham, who has expressive dark eyes that matches unruly hair and 2 full lips and a sadness about him. Not one related to our current situation. Something deeper, like it's embedded in him. I've met people who smile with their eyes, but he frowns with his. But then it gets confusing because later on she also says that he doesn't have any spectacular features that stand out individually, which like, are you calling him mid or not? But this does make me more inclined to believe that he just fits into this category of man, where they're just indistinguishable from each other. Kind of like when you put the Property Brothers in the same flannel shirt and ask me to tell you which one's the realtor. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know. Now the first problem with this book is that they gave the girl that was dating Graham and then cheated on him with Ethan a sassy ass name. Her name is Sasha. How the hell am I supposed to hate a girl named Sasha? Sasha's ugly. You have nothing to worry about. Sasha. I say her name incredulously. Then I repeat her name, putting emphasis on the sha. Sasha. That explains a lot. Guys, I don't get the joke. When I was first reading this book, I sat here on this page for 10 minutes just saying sha over and over again, trying to figure out if it was like a play on words. Do you understand how ridiculous that is to walk into? I sounded like I was having a fucking stroke. Quinn and Graham end up getting Chinese food. Not because they ordered it, but because they like intercepted the delivery that was supposed to go to Ethan and Sasha. So they're sitting on the floor in this hallway with all this Chinese food and they open up the fortune cookies. And one of them says if you only shine light on your flaws, all your perfects will dim. Which I feel like is more appropriate for like a $40 plank of wood from home sense. But the plot must be driven. And who am I but a willing passenger? One of the weirdest moments of this book so far though is when the confrontation happens. Because it doesn't really. When Ethan opens the door and he's greeted by his fiancée and the boyfriend of the girl that he just slept with, you would think that one of them would have something to say to each other, but they end up just staring at each other. And I'm not saying that Graham and Quinn were staring at Ethan and Sasha. I'm saying that Graham and Quinn were staring at each other, refusing to look anywhere else, not saying a word, and sitting crisscross applesauce on the floor like that emo couple from Starbucks. Neither of us looks at the door. Graham stares hard, and he's breathing steadily as he keeps his gaze locked on mine. Quinn? I close my eyes when I hear Ethan say my name. I don't turn towards his voice. I hear Ethan take a step out of his apartment. I can feel my heart in so many places right now, but mostly I feel it in Graham's hands on my cheeks. Ethan says my name again, but it's more of a command to look at him. I open my eyes, but I keep them focused on Graham. The cherry on the cake, though, is them leaving after this and going, letting him know we can do this without a scene. I'm sorry, without a scene? Midsummer is happening on the floor of this man's apartment hallway, and you're not making a scene? Also, I forgot to mention that the story is told in like a past and present POV, so we're going to the present now. And at this point, we find out that Graham and Quinn are actually married and together, but they're struggling to have a child. I will say, there is a natural disconnect from me in the source material. Like, I have to put that out there. Do any of you picture me in charge of a child? Picture that for a second. They've tried IVF and they can't do adoption, which we'll learn why very soon. But shit right now is bleak. I've been facing the opposite direction of Graham for so long, I can't even remember what his eyes... I'm sorry. It's not funny. Can't remember what his eyes look like when he's inside me. What do you mean by that, though? He, like, goes wolf when he's... You know why this is happening? It's because I just watched Twilight and I have that visual of Edward's eyes changing in my head, and that's what I'm picturing right now, and it's throwing me off. Colleen loves a dance metaphor in this book too. She calls it the divorce dance. Partner 1 goes in for the kiss, partner 2 isn't receptive. Partner 1 pretends he didn't notice. We've been dancing the same dance for a while now. I don't know, that sounds kind of fun. But like I said before, shit is not going well for them right now, and she decides that she's gonna give it 1 or 2 more months to stick it out until she's ready to open the wooden box. Which at this point, I'm wondering what the hell's in that dramatic-ass box. How about a bomb? I'm tired of fucking you for the sake of science, Quinn. It would be nice if just one time I could be inside you because you want me there. I'm sorry. It's not funny. I'm not laughing. And her logic for why she feels the way that she does is that all the sex and love making that leads to hope then leads to the moment. Wait, what? The way she writes sometimes is like a riddle, I swear to God. Sex becomes hope becomes devastation. Sex, hope, devastation, devastation, devastation. Now it all feels devastating to me. He'll never understand that. He'll never understand that it isn't him I don't want, it's the devastation. Like, valid. But did we have to build this paragraph like a Gabby Hanna poem? Also, imagine if we just talked to each other about this kind of stuff. Wouldn't that be crazy? Dare I say we could wrap this story up by page 70, but no. This thing is 300 pages long. Quinn later finds out that her sister got pregnant even though her sister didn't even want a kid, so she's super upset obviously because Quinn's been trying for like 6 years and still has nothing. And this is when we find out why they can't go through adoption. It turns out that Graham had gotten in a car accident while drunk, and he tragically lost his big bald baby in the ocean in the process. I'm kidding. About half of that. The drunk driving thing is true. I don't understand why she keeps using these like extreme awful ass situations as backstories for her characters. Like, she never gives them enough attention considering how sensitive of subjects they are. Like, they always feel like they're treated as like, I don't know, his favorite color. So this is Graham. He's a Libra. He also killed somebody when he was driving drunk once, but he is a dog person. After that, we go back to the past and we find out that Quinn doesn't like vegetables. We do get a Sasha moment here though. They're talking about Halloween and Graham ends up going on this like long ass tangent. Do you dress up for Halloween? I'm not opposed to it, but I never dressed up with Sasha because she always went as something typical and slutty. A slutty cheerleader, a slutty nurse, a slutty prude. He pauses for a second. Don't get me wrong, I love a slutty costume. Nothing wrong with a woman showing off her assets if that's what she wants to do. It's just that Sasha never really asked me to dress up. I think she wanted all the attention and didn't really want to do the couples costume thing. That sucks. So much missed opportunity, right? I could have dressed up as her slutty quarterback. I've noticed that Colleen has a habit of posturing her characters like pick-me-ass observations as, oh, but there's nothing wrong with that though. I'm just gonna call her a slut and that she's attention seeking for it. All because she didn't explicitly ask you to be a slutty quarterback with her. Like, get a grip. This is a free country. Nobody's stopping your boring ass. Dare I say you don't have the range for it. We're back to present day now. Quinn and Graham are over at Graham's sister's house and they're getting freaky in the bathroom. Knowing that this kiss won't lead to sex, hope, devastation makes me enjoy it more than if this were happening in our own bathroom at our own house. This is building up to the other thing that drives me postal about the way that Colleen Hoover writes. So Quinn just explained there why she's more comfortable being intimate in somebody else's house versus her own because it won't lead to devastation. She knows that it can't lead to actually having sex. But then the next line, immediately after this observation, she says, "It sounds so fucked up. I don't understand how actions can elicit different responses from me depending on the setting. But right now, I'm not going to question it." But you just explained it. Like, just now. I feel like I'm watching somebody gaslight themselves, but I can't even get to them and like shake their shoulders because they're not a person, they're just words on a fucking page. Beyond my annoyance, they are having a good day at his sister's though. Ed Sheeran starts playing and they're dancing in the living room. We also learn that his sister is pregnant with her third child, which listen, at this point, you're just being stingy. Hand it over. You do not need 3 of them, okay? I know how much US tuition costs. Let me lighten your load. Give me your kid. Much later down the line, once this baby's like actually out in the world, Graham is at his sister's house to go visit the new kid, and Quinn ends up showing up to the house late and they don't realize that she's there. So she listens in on the conversation between Graham and his sister where she mentions he would have been a really good father, and he responds with, I know, it devastated me that it still hasn't happened yet. Quinn obviously gets super upset and she leaves, but this girl is so obtuse that she then says, why would he respond to her with such bluntness? But never tell me the truth about how he feels. Like, I don't know, maybe it's because you never interact with him ever and like act disgusted with him constantly. It's hard to really explain just how much disdain it feels like she has for this guy throughout the entire book without reading it yourself. And if I were to try and sit here and explain it, it would be so boring. So please take my word for it when I say that this girl has made herself so unreceptive to any kind of communication that it is not surprising at all that he wouldn't bring this up with her. You even see it when he eventually comes home and she says, this is the moment when I know I should ask him what he's thinking. This is the moment when I should tell him what I'm thinking. This is the moment I should be honest with him and admit that maybe we should open that box. No clue what's in that box still, by the way. But instead, they resume the dance. How about we start something else that starts with a D? Divorce. We get sent back to the past again. We find out that he was a nerd, which is fun, and then he has a Star Wars comforter. They then fuck in the Star Wars bed. They're having one of those deep chats though, so they end up having the whole like, what do you think is your biggest flaw conversation? And Quinn says, I have a lot. But I think the one I would like to change if I could is my inability to read people. It's hard for me to look at someone and know exactly what they're thinking. Like, I'm sorry, your flaw is that you don't have telepathy? Get the fuck out. Back in present day though, Quinn has reached peak annoying. She starts getting suspicious of Graham because the goodbye kisses started becoming more infrequent, the hello kisses have stopped completely, he's finally stooped to my level in this marriage. He either has something to feel guilty for, or he's finally done fighting for the survival of this marriage. Like, girl, I want you to sound that out slow. So you're suspicious of him for doing things that you've been doing. Okay. She ends up confronting him over it and suspects that there was an affair, and it turns out that there actually was. They go back to the past though just to be like, oh yeah, when things were good, we dressed up as ourselves but sluttier for Halloween. Like, Sasha lives in your minds rent free. I'm not saying she's a perfect person. I am saying she's the blueprint though. We go back to present day though. She's packing a suitcase. She's ready to leave. She threatens to open up that box again. We still have no idea what's in this box. It's driving me crazy at this point. She ends up fleeing to her mother's house, which it's already like known in the book that the mom doesn't really like either of her kids that much. So there's this like awkward come to Jesus that isn't even really a come to Jesus, because the mom's basically like, well, I did my best. R.I.P. And that's literally it. Like, Quinn's like, okay, that's the best I'm gonna get from her. She ends up meeting back up with Graham though when he pulls the whole, in order to hate me, you'd have to love me. And he also mentions that he didn't sleep with the girl. He would never look at a woman the way he looks at Quinn, but because there were things she would do sometimes that would catch my attention. Not because I found her intriguing or attractive, but because her mannerisms reminded me of you. Why is this worse? And he keeps going too. We spend a lot of the day together. I noticed as the hours passed that I was drawn to her, attracted to her, but not because she had something you didn't. I was drawn to her because of how much she reminded me of you. Then he brings up how Quinn would leave the room whenever he came home from work and how she was really distant with him, which, like, valid, but I don't know, go to couples therapy. Get a divorce. Figuring you out is like a fucking riddle sometimes, Quinn. What's that saying? A broken clock is right twice a day? He keeps bringing up that it wasn't about this actual girl though. Even after I started, I should have stopped it. But I couldn't because the whole time I had my eyes closed, I pretended it was you. But I didn't fuck up because I was attracted to her. I fucked up because I miss you. When I'm inside you, I miss you. Like, I'm sorry, is this supposed to be romantic? Then he starts screaming, I love you, Quinn, I fucking love you. He walks towards his car and kicks at the front bumper with his bare foot. He kicks and he kicks and he kicks, and then he pauses to scream at me again. I love you. He slams his fist against the top of his car over and over until he finally collapses against the hood. I love you, he says, quietly shaking his head. Quinn finally addresses the idea of therapy at this point. On page 199, therapists do nothing but try to make you recognize the wrongs within yourself. That's not Graham's issue and it's not my issue. We know our faults. There's no magical cure that therapy will bring us, no matter how much we spend on trying to fix our issue. No therapist in the world can get me pregnant. Obviously not, but that is not the only issue that you guys have. you guys have mad communication issues. Graham ends up coming home because he quit his job and everything seems to be kind of okay, but then when they go to bed, they realize that she's covered in blood. They rush her to the hospital and find out that not only did she have a miscarriage, but there were complications because she had a cervical ectopic abruption. And at this point, we find out that she's just not going to be able to have kids ever. They go back to the past for a while again, but honestly, the only important thing is that Graham and Quinn had ended up deciding to get married really quickly. And then we're back in present day again, and Quinn is still very anti-support. This time we see it in Quinn praising her sister for not really asking her questions or talking about the surgery that she just had. The only thing advice is good for is to pad the esteem of the person giving it. So instead of advice, she's just giving me distraction. Which is a statement I partially agree with. I think that you can support somebody by just being around them and not having a conversation they don't want to have. But this being grouped with like so many different instances where it feels like Colleen is constantly making these statements of like being anti-community or anti-communication or just finding support in other people, it just feels really bizarre. Like there really isn't a part of this book where Quinn gets a true moment of support or discussion with another woman at all. And it's just so odd to me that Quinn constantly views it as like a selfish act to want to communicate or support somebody. And mind you, these are opinions that go unargued through the entire book. All while we're watching Quinn just run in the same circle of coming to the same conclusions and having the same conversations with herself because she won't communicate with anyone. After the surgery, she's obviously really upset because now she like for real can't have kids. So she ends up going to Italy where her sister had moved to go stay there for a bit. And after a few weeks, Graham ends up showing up so that they can have a like ultimatum-esque conversation. And right when we're about to have these two finally communicating with each other, she decides that she's going to spend 2 paragraphs talking about this guy's looks. He's so handsome. As many times as I've turned away from him in the past, it's not because I'm not attracted to him. That's never been the issue. Even now, after a full day of travel, he looks better than he did on the day I met him. It always works that way with men, doesn't it? They somehow look manlier in their 30s and 40s than they did in the pinnacle of their youth. Yeah, funny how that works. This sentence is grammatically correct, but it's wordy and boring to read. I want to fall to my knees and tell him that if on our wedding day someone had forced me to choose between the possibility of having children or spending a life with Graham, I would have chosen life with him. Without a doubt, I would have chosen him. Now I feel like I'm getting gaslit. Why are we here then? They finally decide that they're gonna open this box, and at this point, there better be a gun in this box for me. But it's not a gun or a bomb. It's letters. So the premise of the box was that when they got married, they decided they were both going to write themselves a letter that they put in this box, and they'd either read it on their 25th anniversary or at a point where they felt like they were on the brink of divorce. Maybe reminding each other how we felt when we closed the box will help us change our minds if we ever need to open it early. It turns out that Graham ended up writing a ton of extra letters. So she goes to read them all. This man has been journaling, and in the first one we get a poem because he's so comfortable in his masculinity around her. I think this is the perfect time to finally put that periodic table of elements love poem to use. Terrible news, this would probably eat as a Vanilla Ice song. I have a sneaking suspicion that Colleen needed to get to a certain page count because there are so many of these letters and they are so long, and all of them are basically just him being like, oh my god, I love you so much. Like, so much. I can't imagine us ever being close to divorce, but like, if we are, don't. I love you. Like, I'm sorry. Wrap it up. I also forgot that this girl even had a job until they mention it in the letters. On like page 264, he's like, I love how much you love your job. To which I'm like, what job? It turns out he was also fully aware that she only liked being intimate with him in public because it wouldn't lead to sex, which I guess great that he recognized that, but what was the logic of instead of talking that out with her in the moment, you decide to write it in a letter that she's either going to be opening in 15 years or when you're on the brink of divorce? Like, maybe you two are meant for each other. Like, holy shit, you guys are both so dumb. Then he brings up the cheating again and says, I think that's why I did what I did, because I knew I would never be selfless enough to leave you. I allowed myself to do something completely out of character for me because I felt I was no longer worthy of you. It would be easier to convince myself that you deserve better. But even still, no matter how content I am with you in this life, it doesn't mean you are content with yours. I'm sorry. Are we reading the same book? Content? Either of them? She finishes the letters though, and of course everything has been solved magically. Everything's perfectly okay. It turns out that they had a conversation before they got married about what would happen if they didn't have kids, and they both said they'd be fine with it. I wish you could have seen my face when I read these words. I was 250 plus pages in this book at this point. This swamp of a book that has been telling me this whole time how much they want a kid, and suddenly, what do you mean? We don't need a kid. Why would we need a kid? Where did you get that idea from? It also turns out that he didn't read the letter that she wrote for him because he doesn't need to, and he's gonna read it on their anniversary. And now she's suddenly like, oh my god, totally don't need to be a mother. I actually want to write a book. Also, while we're here in Italy, why don't we just stay here with my sister? The epilogue is them in Italy. They're super happy. They realize they didn't communicate before, but now they do, so everything's great. We avoided so much in our marriage simply out of fear. We avoided communicating. We avoided talking about the challenges we faced. We avoided all the things that made us the saddest. And after time, I began to avoid the other half of my life altogether. I avoided him physically, which led to emotional avoidance, which led to a lot of feelings that were left unsaid. Page 298. We finally get this. I need an Advil. And they have the nerve to say, of course, opening the box didn't miraculously solve everything. But it did, though. You can't say it didn't when it did. I did not just sit through 200 pages of this bullshit for you to then designate 2 paragraphs to everything being sorted out for you to then go, but it wasn't solved really quickly. You can't pull that shit on me. I was there. And then they get a fucking dog. Like, just... I'm done. Honestly, out of the 5 books that I read from Colleen, this one shocked me the most. Not because there was anything particularly outlandish happening plot-wise, but I had expectations going into it, and it really did not turn out the way I thought it was going to. I guess considering the praise that I saw for it online, I thought that it was just going to be a lot different writing-wise, but it felt very standard Colleen Hoover. And dare I say, out of the 5, it was the most boring book that I read. And I just feel like it had almost nothing of value to say about the topic it was trying to deal with, being infertility. There were some moments in the book that I felt like illustrated the frustration that anyone in that position would feel, but overall, this story was just drowning in the most ridiculous train of thought I've ever read from. And that train was driven by our main character. Like, you could not escape that shit. I think what was especially frustrating about this book is that there were so many toxic things that the main character does, but they're not argued at all in the story, and everything just turns out well for her in the end anyway because it's fiction. Like, it wasn't ridiculous in a fun, campy way, it was just frustrating. I think this was just especially annoying to me because I noticed that a lot of the protection that Colleen Hoover gets from her fans is that people will say she's dealing with hard topics. But is she really dealing with them, or is she just flippantly using them to spice up a plot? I just don't think that she grapples enough with the complicated topics she throws in her books to then say that she's exempt from criticism because she put them in there. What I did find interesting about this book though is that while I was reading it, I was convinced that this must have come out before It Ends With Us, because I noticed It Ends With Us actually does a lot of things better. But it turns out that All Your Perfects actually came out 2 years after it, which is shocking to me. But speaking of that book, I think it's about time that we get into it. So this book stars Lily Bloom, that strange girl with the erratic red hair who once fell in love with a homeless guy and brought great shame upon her entire family. Also, she's a gardener named Lily Bloom. Joe Mama ass name, I know. So she meets this guy who's like smoking on a rooftop. He's acting really mysterious. I can tell by his haircut alone that he's the kind of man that people are easily impressed by, and I refuse to feed into his ego. Not that he's done anything to make me think he even has one, but he's wearing a casual Burberry shirt. Do you always say what's on your mind? He shrugs. Not to most people. This makes me smile. I like that he doesn't even know me, but for whatever reason, I'm not considered most people to him. I'm sorry, have we forgotten who we are already? Lily, snap out of it! This guy's a doctor though, he's a neurosurgeon. He's kind of giving me like TikTok doctor energy though, as in the guys who do not seem like they actually have a license. Like, I'm sorry, but if you're really a doctor, why are you doing TikToks all day? And why does your coat look like the same one I saw in Spirit Halloween last week? Something's not adding up. This guy's name though is Ryle Kincaid. I swear to God, Colleen Hoover male character names make no sense. What do you mean Ryle Kincaid? Just call him Kyle. Is this what Bella Thorne feels like on a daily basis? Because I'm fighting for my life right now.
My name is Bella Thorne, and this is the story of the time I found out I have dyslexia.
Growing things. It's my passion. It's always been my dream to open a florist shop, but I'm afraid if I did, people wouldn't think my desire was authentic. They would think I was trying to capitalize off my name and that being a florist isn't really my dream job. Girl, I'm gonna be so honest with you right now. Nobody gives that much of a shit about your fuck-ass flower shop. Do you think I'm asking Flo from Progressive if her heart's really in insurance? After this though, this man has the nerve to laugh about her name. Like, I'm sorry, your name is Ryle Kincaid. The call is coming from inside the house. This guy does not shut up though. I feel like everyone fakes who they really are, when deep down we're all equal amounts of screwed up. Some of us are just better at hiding it than others. Either his high is setting in, or he's just very introspective. Either way, I'm okay with it. My favorite conversations are the ones with no real answers. I could have a more stimulating conversation with an AI chatbot posing as Kamala Harris than I could with a character from a Colleen Hoover book.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context.
Tell me a naked truth, Lily. How about I call the police? Not because he's doing anything illegal. I just don't like him. She ends up telling him though that her father used to be abusive and that he recently just died and she's coming from his funeral. And she'd ended up like roasting him at his funeral when she had to go up and give a speech. And he pulls his hands up behind his head and looks me straight in the eye. I want to fuck you. I'm thinking about that tweet from the weekend where he's like, I will find you and I will fuck you. Okay, that's enough. And then after that, the next day, we meet Lily's roommate, Lucy, who loves to hear herself sing. And after Lily speaks to her mom on the phone, she decides to go through what she calls her Ellen diaries, which at first read, I thought, there's no way this is what I think this is going to be. But oh no, it is. Dear Ellen, before I tell you what happened today, I have a really good idea for a new segment on your show. It's called Ellen at Home. I think lots of people would like to see you outside of work. I always wonder what you're like at home when it's just you and Portia and cameras aren't around. Ellen, do not do that. I'm from the year 2020. You don't even understand the can of worms you're gonna open if you do that shit. In that diary entry though, she mentions that the house beside her is vacant and that somebody from her school is like squatting in there. So in her next entry, she mentions that she actually got food from her fridge and brought it to the doorstep to see if he would like take it, and it turned out that he did. And they end up talking at the bus stop the next day. So we flash forward to the present, which is now 6 months past when she first met Ryle, and now Lily is in her new flower shop that she just bought and she's in it with her mom. It's basically a mess, like she's starting from scratch. But this random woman named Alyssa walks in and is like, hey, I saw an old ass help wanted sign. Hire me. Sorry, verbatim she says she'll work for free because I don't really need a job. I just saw the sign and thought, what the heck? I'd be happy to help you with whatever you need. Cleaning, decorating, picking out paint colors. I'm a Pinterest whore. And Lily's like, okay, we're like literally in an empty store, but sure, you're hired. At this point, of course, Lily's starting to brainstorm what the flower shop is going to look like. What if instead of showcasing the sweet side of flowers, we showcase the villainous side? Instead of pink accents, we use darker colors like a deep purple or even black. Okay, so I guess this is like the bad Cinderella of flower shops. We put out displays of darker flowers wrapped in things like leather or silver chains. I am trying so hard to picture a combination of the things that she's saying that does not look like ass in my head right now. It is not working. So Alyssa's husband ends up tracking her down and like walks into the store, but it turns out that there's another guy with him. The first thing I notice are his arms. Holy shit. I know those arms. Those are the arms of a neurosurgeon. Yeah. And Ryle's there because it turns out that Alyssa is his sister. They of course end up talking privately again though. You want to hear a naked truth? He nods. I've wanted to go back to your roof on more than one occasion since that night, but I was too scared you'd be there. You kind of make me nervous. My turn? I still very much want to. This is when Alyssa walks in though, and she's like, did you just tell my boss you want to fuck her? Alyssa looks at Marshall and points at Ryle again. He just told Lily he wants to fuck her. Colleen, once you are corny, you're on the cob forever. I smile at her and wave it off. It's fine, Alyssa. Lots of people want to fuck me. I glance back at Ryle and he's still casually stroking my foot. At least your brother speaks his mind. Not a lot of people have the courage to say what they're actually thinking. Actually, Ellen, that is not true. I think many men find it very easy to just tell women that they only want to have sex with them. We're back to the past when she's writing to Ellen again. And she tells Ellen that she told him that he could watch your show with her after school. Him, of course, being the homeless guy that we now know is named Atlas. We also get this wild line. I think good comedic timing is one of the most important things about a person's personality. Every time he laughed at your jokes, it made me feel better about sneaking him into my house. She also finds and reads another letter where she's detailing her experience watching her mom get pushed down by her dad. She runs off to Atlas and he comforts her. She puts the letters away though and concludes that reading about the things my dad used to do to my mom kind of puts me in a bad mood. Reading about Atlas kind of puts me in a sad mood. I try to fall asleep and think about Ryle, but the whole situation with him kind of makes me mad and sad. I feel like there's a difference between accessible writing and something that just sounds like it's meant for the cat in the hat. At this point though, Ryle Lyle the crocodile shows up at her door. And it turns out that he had knocked on every single door in the building until he eventually found her. For the past week, I haven't been able to get you out of my head. I don't know why. At work, at home, all I can think about is how crazy it feels when I'm near you. And I need you to make it stop, Lily. Please let me fuck you just once. He's panting a little, and his eyes are still frantic, but he's looking at me pleadingly. Ew, he's spare coochieing her. Like, do you have no shame? She tries to get him to leave because she's like, I don't feel like doing that right now. I feel kind of gross. I need a shower. Please have sex with me. I want you so bad, and I swear once you'll have sex with me, you'll never hear from me again, I promise. No self-imposed irony is saving your clown ass right now, just so we're clear. You say this will make it stop, but I'm warning you right now, Ryle. I'm like a drug. If you have sex with me tonight, it's only gonna make things worse for you. So she goes to shower and get ready, but by the time that she's finished, he's asleep. A common occurrence in a lot of different Colleen Hoover books is that she loves repetition and Thanksgiving. Her writing is so repetitive though that you would think that she assumes that her audience is just a bunch of golden retrievers. It's been 53 days since Ryle walked out of my apartment that morning, which means it's been 53 days since I've heard from him. But that's okay, because for the last 53 days, I've been too busy to give him much thought. And of course you could argue that this is just a stylistic choice, but personally, if it is, I just think it's a poor one. Past me also left a lovely annotation here. We move on to the opening day of Lily's flower shop. Ryle shows up and he ends up getting some flowers to send to somebody. And Alyssa freaks out because Ryle doesn't send flowers. And it turns out that the flowers are for Lily. We finally get a friend for Lily that's like completely detached from Ryle, which means we'll probably only know this person for like 15 pages. And they're actually headed to a party that's going to be at Alyssa's place, so they start talking about Ryle. He's a neurosurgeon and he wants to have sex with me. Really, really bad. He literally got down on his knees and said, "Please, Lily, please have sex with me." It wasn't as pathetic as it sounds. Well, they go to the party at Alyssa's apartment, of course, and it turns out that Ryle actually shares it with them. And while at the party, Lily notices this really big picture on the wall that feels oddly familiar. This is the picture he took on the rooftop the first time we met. He must have blown it up and distorted it so no one would notice what it was. Like this man just casually has a massive photo of her in his apartment that only she can tell that it's her because it's so distorted. I'm fucking scared. They end up getting in an argument at the party because he's like giving her mixed signals. When I was reading the book for the first time, I read this specific part in the same cadence as that Diary of a Wimpy Kid edit. Don't call me. Stop flirting with me. Stop hanging pictures of me in your apartment and stop sending me flowers. Because when you do those things, it doesn't feel good, Ryle. They end up making up though, and when she goes back to her own apartment, she finds out that her singing roommate is leaving because she got engaged. I start laughing because until this moment, I had no idea how much I'd been waiting for this to happen. The whole place to myself. What's even better is when I do decide to have sex with Ryle, we can have it over here all the time and not have to worry about being quiet. You know what? Fuck you, Lily. You'll never get away from the sound of a roommate who's saying too much in your shared apartment. We're brought back to the past with Atlas though, and they're gardening together. When he was wiping that cow shit on me, it was quite possibly the most turned on I'd ever been. Whoa, okay, come on. As the letters to Ellen progress though, she ends up letting him stay on the floor in her bedroom because it's winter time, it's too cold for him to squat in that other house. And when we're brought back to the present, we actually get a moment of introspection from Lily. I'm such a sap. It gives me this longing to hug so many people from my past, especially my mother, because for the past year, I haven't really thought about everything she had to go through before my father died. I know it probably still hurts her, but then we're immediately interrupted by Ryle's annoying ass. Ryle, are you asleep? I guess so. Lily, sad face, you warned me. You said one time with you wouldn't be enough. You said you were like a drug. You failed to tell me you were the most addictive kind. They talk like actors in a Netflix original. I can't do the We Did It Reddit ass dialogue anymore. Just make them high five at this point. When Lily goes to work though, she's thinking about Alyssa, who she's now realized is like super rich and doesn't need to work. When she comes back, I'm still watching her curiously. I say it again. Alyssa, why do you work here? Because I can't get pregnant? This completely comes out of left field. Then they gloss over it and they move on to Ryle wanting to like meet her parents. And Alyssa's like, wow, he never wants to meet anybody's parents. You must have the most addictive pussy in Boston. Okay, I'm kidding. She didn't say the last part. She might as well have though. But so Ryle, Lily, and her mom end up going to this restaurant and it turns out that Atlas is a waiter there. So Atlas finds out about Ryle and Lily finds out that Atlas is actually dating someone named Cassie. We're back to these Ellen diaries though, which like, girl, how many letters did you write? Dear Ellen, just keep swimming. Recognize that quote, Ellen? It's what Dory says to Marlin in Finding Nemo. We watched Finding Nemo, and when that part came up where Marlin was looking for Nemo and he was feeling really defeated, Dory said to him, when life gets you down, do you want to know what you've got to do? Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming, swimming, swimming. Alice grabbed my hand when Dory said that. He didn't hold it like a boyfriend holds a girlfriend's hand. He squeezed it like he was saying that that was us. He was Marlin and I was Dory, and I was helping him swim. Just keep swimming, I whispered to him. In another Ellen letter, we find out that Alice got in touch with one of his uncles who lives in Boston and actually has an opportunity to live with him. Are you going? I asked. He shrugged. I don't know. You're telling me that this man is so pussy whipped that he's willing to stay homeless? Maybe she wasn't kidding. Then almost as if we were made of eggshells, he lowered his mouth to mine and just rested there. I didn't know what to do next, but I didn't care. I didn't care if we stayed like that all night and never even moved our mouths. It was everything. The next day, somebody tries to bully Atlas on the bus because he kissed her and was smelly, to which she's like, I know Atlas better than any of them do, and I know what a good person he is, no matter what his clothes look like or if he used to smell before he started using my shower. Yeah, she loved him even when he was stinky. In another Ellen letter, we get a bit more insight on Lily's parents' relationship. Her father is clearly physically abusive to her mother. There's also an attempted sexual assault. Then they fast forward to Atlas actually reaching his decision on whether he's going to go to Boston or not. Obviously he's gonna go. He made me promise. Said if I moved to Boston, everything really would be better there and it would be the best city in the world. And then after that, they hooked up. We're brought back to present day though, and they're like in a bar all wearing onesies for like a sports game. I've never in my life seen so many men in onesies. Alyssa and I are the only women wearing them, but I kind of like that. And it's at the bar that we learn that not only is Alyssa pregnant, but that Alyssa and Ryle actually had an older brother who passed away when they were younger. After the bar, Ryle and Lily have a conversation. I like you. Everything about you, Lily. Being inside you, being outside you, being near you. I like it all. And at this point, it seems like everything's going really well for Ryle and Lily. Until it isn't. It all starts when she burns a casserole that she was making for the both of them, and Ryle ends up going to grab it without getting a pot holder and burns his hand and like smashes the glass everywhere. She's been drinking, so she's like a bit tipsy, so she's laughing. She just thinks it's funny, because like, it is funny. But suddenly she finds herself on the floor grabbing at her eye because Ryle had slammed her in the face. God damn it, Lily, this isn't funny. This hand is my fucking career. The hand that he burned is the one that he uses for surgery, and he had some big surgery coming up on Monday, so that's why she thinks he responded so strongly. But now he's trying to act all like, oh no, like, I don't care, it's fine, like, I care about you, are you okay? Considering her past, she's trying to process everything going on, and she's like, no, this isn't my father, like, he wouldn't have consoled me the way that Ryle did. I need to feel his sorrow, his regret. I get both of these things in the way he kisses me. I spread my legs for him, and his sorrow comes in another form. Slow, apologetic thrusts inside of me.
Okay. Whatever that means.
She ends up deciding to forgive him because I feel if I don't find a way to forgive him, I'll somewhat be placing blame on him for the resentment I still hold for my father. He's not like my father. Ryle loves me. He's never come out and said it before, but I know he does, and I love him. What happened in the kitchen tonight is something I'm confident won't happen again, not after seeing how upset he is that he hurt me. A few days later, they go to that same restaurant again that Atlas works at, but this time they're going with Alyssa, and Ryle lies to Alyssa about what caused the injury. It's at this visit, though, that they learn that Atlas actually isn't a waiter, he's the chef and the owner of the place. And when Atlas notices the bruise on Lily's eye and the bandage around Ryle, what the fuck is his name? He connects the dots. When Lily goes to the bathroom, he ends up meeting her there and is like, listen, what the hell happened? She tries to tell him it was an accident, but of course he's not buying it, and as they're leaving, they actually meet up with Ryle. Of course, Ryle starts freaking out and Atlas and him start fighting. This is Atlas, the homeless boy you pity fucked? This coming from Captain Spare Coochie is crazy. The fight gets broken up though and Ryle goes outside and Lily follows him. They get in a little bit of a fight that gets cleared up later. But the next day, Atlas shows up to Lily's flower shop to check in if she's okay. He brings her a gift that he said he bought her 3 years ago and then also wrote his number on a piece of paper that she could like hide in the back of her phone if she needed it. When she leaves, she opens the gift and it's a book. There's a picture of Ellen DeGeneres on the front. Jesus. Why does Ellen DeGeneres play such a strong role in this story? The title is seriously, I'm kidding. I laugh and then open the book, gasping quietly when I see it's autographed. Lily, Atlas says just keep swimming. Ellen DeGeneres. Why did my Google Doc autocorrect this to Ellen Dangerous? Back to Ryle and Lily though. Ryle brings Lily to meet his mom, where he introduces her as his blasphemous whore.
Nothing's better than the sound of gagging and headboard slamming.
Michael.
It ends up going really well though, and after Ryle's mother leaves, they end up talking about Alyssa's pregnancy, and the possibility of Lily and Ryle getting married gets brought up, which they decide, hey, why don't we just do it right now? Naked truth, he whispers. I'm so excited to be your husband. I could piss my damn pants. How about we keep that to ourselves, actually? But yeah, they go to Vegas and they get married. He made me promise him I'd never become vegan. That was a simple promise. I love cheese too much. What did I tell you guys? Corn spotted on the cob. So they're in a good mood, obviously. They're newlyweds. She's in the shower getting ready, and as she leaves, she calls for Ryle and notices that he isn't answering. Funny thing, he says, setting my phone on the coffee table in front of him. I dropped your phone by accident. Cover pops off. I find this number hidden in the back of it. So I called it. Nobody answered when he called, but he did get the voicemail, so he knows that it was Atlas. He ends up leaving the apartment to the stairwell, and of course she follows him, and then he ends up pushing her down the stairs. But when she comes to, he insists that she had fallen. Of course she gets really pissed at him and tells him to leave, and she locks the door. When she does eventually meet back up with him, we get a lot more clarity about the brother situation. It turns out that Ryle had accidentally shot and killed his brother at age 6 because he hadn't realized that the gun that he was playing with was a real one. And we only find out about this because after Alyssa had heard what Ryle had done to Lily, she'd insisted that he had to tell her what happened with his brother too. He claims that when he gets angry, he blacks out and he's been in therapy for it. And he says it's not his excuse, it's his reality, but like, they're framing it as an excuse. Now I have to say, Colleen writes a great line here. My whole life, I knew exactly what I'd do if a man ever treated me the way my father treated my mother. It was simple. I would leave and it would never happen again. I'm supposed to be the woman my mother was never strong enough to be. Then that freakazoid comes in and ruins the moment. Help me, Lily. I need you to help me. He holds me against him and I know deep in my heart that I'm doing the right thing. There is so much more good in him than bad, and I'll do whatever I can to convince him of that until he can see it too. Lucy, the singing roommate, is back, by the way. She's employed at the flower shop now. And while Lily's in her office, she's comparing the differences between Ryle and her father. He never should have pushed me, but I also did things I wasn't proud of. And if I had just left, would that not be going against our marriage vows? For better or for worse, I refuse to give up on my marriage that easily. I am a strong woman. I've been around abusive situations my whole life. I will never become my mother. I believe that 100%. And Ryle will never become my father. I think we needed what happened on that stairwell to happen so I would know his past and we'd be able to work on it together. Ryle then goes on to surprise Lily with an apartment in Alyssa's building. And she's like, I feel like this should bother me, but I'm too excited. We also learn that Alyssa and Marshall decide to name their baby after Ryle. We want to name her after someone Marshall and I both think the world of. So we added an E to your name. We're calling her Riley. I'm sorry. This man just pushed his wife down the stairs. You did what? She comes home from work though, expecting Ryle to be asleep, but he's still up in the kitchen. She can tell he's been drinking and he asks her about this magnet on the fridge and where she got it, and she says she doesn't really know. Then he asks her to take off her shirt and read this article, and she's starting to think, oh, maybe this is like a sex thing. So she grabs the article and starts reading it. And as she's reading it, she realizes that it's an article that's written about Atlas's restaurant. The owner, Atlas Corrigan, is a 2-time award-winning chef and also a United States Marine. It's no secret what the acronym for his highly successful restaurant Bib stands for, Better in Boston. I gasp. Everything is better in Boston. It was an homage to someone who had a huge impact on my life, someone who meant a lot to me. She still means a lot to me. It's at this point that she realizes that Ryle must know that the magnet is from Atlas. And when she rushes to her bedroom, she realizes that like all of her stuff is all over the place and that he had read all of her Ellen diaries. Then he headbutts her and she passes out on the bed. When she eventually comes to, she realizes that her eye is bleeding and Ryle is crying, so she consoles Ryle enough that he calms down and falls asleep, and then she slips out. She ends up going to the hospital with Atlas and she breaks down. I did this to myself. I allowed this to happen. I am my mother. After that, they end up going back to Atlas's house and Lily starts to freak out about the way that Cassie's gonna look at her. She'll wonder all the same things I used to wonder about my own mother when I saw her in my same situation. People spend so much time wondering why the women don't leave. Where are all the people who wonder why the men are ever abusive? Isn't that where the only blame should be placed? It turns out that Atlas actually lied about currently having a girlfriend though. So while she's in Atlas's apartment trying to figure out what she wants to do, she decides to write a letter to Ellen. I know these are things that once went through my mother's head, but the difference between the two of us is that she had more to worry about. She didn't have the financial stability I have. She didn't have the resources to leave and give me what she thought was a decent shelter. I have a feeling reasoning really kicked her ass a time or two. Then she finds out that she's pregnant with Ryle's baby. She ends up talking with Alyssa, who is like, listen, do not take that man back. As you can see, I have some very detailed annotations going on here. She does eventually tell Ryle about the baby, but then she also meets with her mother afterward. And her mom says, every incident chips away at your limit. Every time you choose to stay, it makes the next time that much harder to leave. Eventually, you lose sight of your limit altogether because you start to think, I've lasted 5 years, what's 5 more? She basically tells her if Ryle truly loved you, he wouldn't let you take him back. So as Lily's going through pregnancy, she doesn't really come to a decision on what she's going to do with Ryle. Name-wise, when she has the kid though, she decides she's either going to name her Alyssa or after his brother. She ends up going with Emerson, which is the name of Ryle's brother. I don't know if I'm crazy for thinking this, but I feel like it's kind of weird to name your kid after the reason that your husband gave for being abusive to you. I don't know. Am I looking too far into that? Or I guess I shouldn't say the reason, but more so the person that the event was surrounding, that they give as like a reason for it. As she's holding the baby though, that she just named, she decides she's come to another decision. And she tells that man, I want a divorce. He starts begging her to take her back and she is not having it. And then we get what I would consider the best paragraph that Colleen Hoover has ever written. Cycles exist because they are excruciating to break. It takes an astronomical amount of pain and courage to disrupt a familiar pattern. Sometimes it seems easier to just keep running in the same familiar circles rather than facing the fear of jumping and possibly not landing on your feet. My mother went through it. I went through it. I'll be damned if I allow my daughter to go through it. I kiss her on the forehead and I make her a promise. It stops here with me and you. It ends with us. Like, I'm sorry, she ate that line. The epilogue is so bad though. She like runs into Atlas and is like, I forgot to tell you Emerson's middle name. I put my hands on my hips and exhale. It's Dory. They end up getting together and he brings his mouth to my ear and in a whisper he says, you can stop swimming now, Lily. We finally reached the shore. Would you two get out of here? The other ending's so much better. Like, how are you going to end the book off that well and then stick that horse shit at the end? So I think it's important to note that there's an author's note at the back of the book, and it details that the story is loosely based on Colleen's mother's own experience. She got permission from her mom to write the story, and that her intent with this book was to help people understand the position people like her mother have been in. Now, do I think this is a great exploration of abuse and the complications that come with it? No, but this is the only Colleen Hoover book I read where it felt like she was actually trying to engage with the complicated topic she was bringing up. And what's kind of annoying about this book is that I feel like there are a lot of elements of it that actually work against it. Like the love triangle to me was just so annoying and distracting. I don't know why it was there. Really do feel like it took away from the best parts of this book, which for me were when Lily was interacting with her mother. And it sucks that we only got one chapter of that. I feel like there were glimpses of not just her mother's experience in this book, but also Colleen's as somebody who watched her mother go through what she had. It's hard to not get emotional reading stuff like that, so I can completely understand why people cry at the end of this thing. So in those cases, Colleen does accomplish what she wanted to with this book. Personally for me though, I'm sure you guys could tell I wasn't a fan of Ryle at all from the jump, so it didn't work for me, but that's not to say it didn't work for others. Now while the opinions on the book itself are divided, there was nobody okay with that coloring book. If you don't know about the situation, Colleen announced that she was going to be putting out a coloring book that was based on It Ends With Us. I still don't know what iconic scenes, settings, and quotes would have been included in this thing. Like, what am I going to color in? Ryle begging for coochie? The kinky flower shop? One thing I do know is that Just Keep Swimming quote was nowhere near this thing. The mouse would have not let that shit slide. Closing thoughts wise, I will say this book definitely got the strongest emotional response out of me from the other 5. I didn't cry or anything, but it did touch me a bit. But I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. But it is considerably better than all your shit stains, okay? Not a high bar to pass, but a bar nonetheless. I can't stress enough, I'm burning this thing. Hopefully you guys enjoyed though. I know this one was a little bit more serious considering the subject matter, but don't worry, in the final part we're going to be looking at Verity and November 9, which I would consider both to be comedies, if I'm being totally honest. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. You can also follow me outside of YouTube on Goodreads, Spotify, Letterboxd, all of those different links I'll have in the pinned comment down below. Don't forget, you can get 40% off your first order at ThredUp using my code KC40. Link is below if you're interested. But otherwise, really hope you guys enjoyed again, and I'll see you in the next one.